All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. If you're just joining, we were just sharing a little bit about ourselves in the chat, who we are, educator or family member, a little bit about our kiddos, where we're calling from. But we're going to go ahead and get started to make sure that we get through all of the content for tonight and make sure we share all of the resources and tips for you all. So again, welcome. This is our first webinar of the new school year in our Every Family Counts series. And this is a webinar series that is designed for you all as family members. But if you're an educator on the call, please stay on and you can relay these tips. You can use them in your classroom, but you can also relay these tips to families. And this webinar is recorded, so you can also share the link once it's up on our website to families if they were unable to join for this evening. So our session for tonight is called Developing Family Literacy Practices to Support Children Grades K-2. Before we start, I just wanted to let you all know that we did a similar webinar for birth through age 5, and the archive is on our website. And then later this year, we'll also have a webinar for families to support the remaining grade age ranges. So please look out for that. So our agenda for tonight, I'll give you a little bit of overview of RIF and who we are. And then we're going to go over 3 main concepts tonight: phonemic awareness, phonics, and fluency. And we'll give you a little bit of the what, why, and how for each of those. Then we'll give you a bunch of resources that we have at RIF for families. And then I'm going to close us out with a read aloud of a story and model some of the skills that we talked about for tonight. So if you have young kiddos around you, we encourage you to bring them on at the end of the call to listen to this awesome read aloud. So our vision here at RIF is to develop a nation of lifelong readers, and our mission works to disrupt the alarming U.S. literacy crisis by inspiring the joy of reading in children, which we know is a critical element to driving frequency, motivation, and engagement needed to create skill readers. And we know that if we build a foundation of joy for children, then development, discover, and opportunity follow. So all of the resources and activities that we will share tonight are really centered around that piece of joy. That's really what we believe here at RIF. So all of the activities that we share are going to be super fun and joyful to practice with your young ones. And since its founding in 1966, RIF has impacted about 188 million children in 50 states and DC and some US territories as well. We've distributed about 427 million books, supported about 27,000 communities, and have over 1 million volunteers, teachers, and advocates in our network. And as we always say, if you're here tonight, then you are a part of that network. So thank you. And my name is Carly O'Brien. I am the Senior Associate of Professional Development here at RIF. I was a classroom teacher and a reading specialist for a few years, and I'm super excited to use tonight to talk with directly with families. And I'm going to toss it to Erin to introduce herself and kick us off with our icebreaker in the chat.
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here. I'm Erin Bailey, Vice President, Literacy Programs and Research at Reading is Fundamental. I'm also a former educator, reading specialist, and English second language specialist. I saw in the chat someone was an IB teacher. I'm also IB certified and was an IB pre-K and kindergarten teacher. And I have 2 littles, a 1-year-old boy and a girl who will be 4 in October. So I also saw in the chat someone has a 4-year-old. Glad to be in good company.
I can't believe she's turning 4, Erin.
I know. Okay, so in the chat, if you would mind, go ahead and share a little bit about what brought you here today or what you're hoping to learn today. Tips and tools, yeah. And again, if you're a family member, welcome. And if you're an educator hoping to pass tips along to families or even use them in your classroom, welcome as well. Yeah, supporting parents. We also have a Q&A box that you're welcome to put questions in throughout this presentation as well.
Awesome. See lots of families in the chats looking for direct support, but also seeing lots of
Yeah,
educators looking to transfer these skills. So that's
great.
awesome.
I will also share, we have a whole series of webinars directly around family engagement tips and strategies for literacy. Um, if you're, looking for family engagement strategies too. And we'll share out those links at the end.
So we're gonna go ahead and keep on populating your answers and share, but we're gonna go ahead and keep going.
Okay. All right, so we're going to first talk about phonological awareness and the stages here. If you went to our birth through age 5 webinar, we shared something very similar to this. So the best way to think about phonological awareness, that word phone in there, like hearing. So these are activities that you can do with your eyes closed. So they're just listening activities where, although you see letters up here, we're not associating yet letters with sounds. We're just focusing on manipulating the sounds. So it starts by being able to divide words into syllables, like the example here, watermelon has 4 syllables. Then children develop their ability to rhyme, such as dog, frog, log. They have that og ending. Alliteration, which is usually like making silly sentences with the same beginning sound, silly Sally sells salami. And then sorting words by blending endings and sounds, and onset and rhyme. We're going to go into details about those in the next slide. So really, when we think about our kindergarten, first and second grade learners, they should be working on these 2 upper levels. And you see it's a staircase here because it does build upon. So by kindergarten, first and second grade, children are working on their abilities to sort words by beginning and ending sound. And that's intentional. It's easier to sort words by beginning sound than it is by ending sound. So for example, sorting by ending sound, bed, dad, and round all end with that d sound. So, you can have your child sort sounds that way. And then onset and rhyme. Notice the spelling rhyme here is R-I-M-E. It's different than rhyme, the R-H-Y-M-E at the bottom of the staircase. This means separating the beginning sound of the word from the vowel. So we call that onset, and then where the vowel starts, that's the rhyme. So you can see the example here is star, being able to break off the st and have st-r. Oh, I see a great question about Spanish. We do have our early childhood version of the birth through 5 in Spanish, and looks like Carly already shared the link. Thanks, Carly. She's really fast with sharing the links.
Awesome. I try my best to multitask, but sometimes I'm a little slow. So so thanks, Erin. So you heard Erin share a little bit about what is phonemic awareness and how those are the 2 later on skills, a part of phonological awareness that students develop. And phonemic awareness is simply the ability to notice, think about, and manipulate the individual sounds, which are called phonemes, in spoken word. So children demonstrate this by many ways. So first, they demonstrate it by recognizing words that have the same beginning sound. So like turtle, toy, two. The child is able to indicate that all of those words start with the same sound. They're demonstrating the ability to master phonemic awareness. Another example is identifying the beginning and ending sound in the word. So a child might be able to recognize that the beginning sound of the word dog is d, and the ending sound in dog is g. So it's all about the sounds. So what sounds do they hear? There's other things that children do, such as blending sounds together. So if we're thinking of the word cat and we're blending the sounds together, it might sound something like a cat. So we're taking k, a, t, all 3 of those sounds and blending them together to say cat. We might also do this with sh, ah, shop. So hearing those individual sounds separately and being able to blend them together is another indicator that children are able to master that skill. And then the opposite, segmenting those sounds apart. So starting with the word dog and then separating the sounds d, ah, g. Similarly with the word first. So starting by hearing the full word thirst, then breaking it apart or segmenting it into all the sounds that it makes, the individual phonemes. St. So the word thirst has 3 sounds that we'll hear. There's other ways that children demonstrate this mastery as well. So let's say we're starting with the word spark. So you'll see on the screen the word spark. Something that children might do is be able to delete the sound. So if you delete the s, you're left with park. So now that's our word that we're going to start with. Then you're going to substitute the ending sound for the word t, and you'll get the word part. That's called substituting the different sounds. And then if we're taking the base word of part, now that we have that, and then we're adding sounds, we might add ing, and it becomes parting. So these are all different ways that children are able to think about and manipulate these sounds. So you might be asking, why is it important? So phonemic awareness is necessary for learning and using what we call the alphabetic code. So children who, like I mentioned before, can take apart sounds, recognize the sounds, and then put them back together are demonstrating that foundational skill for being able to use the alphabetic principle. And then without it, children are unable to make the connection between what they see and what they hear. Another reason why it's important is because phonemic awareness predicts later outcomes in reading and spelling. So in other words, students must be able to identify, if we're thinking of the word dog, they must be able to identify d in that word. The word dish also has the d, and the word mad also has that d. And if they're able to identify and separate those sounds, then later on they can identify that the letter D represents that sound. And Erin's going to model a nice activity for us to practice this.
Okay, so this is an activity that families can do at home, too, but educators, you can also do this in your classroom. And a reminder, phonemic and phonological awareness you can do with your eyes closed. So this is also a great activity that you can do walking to school or walking to the bus to get to school, driving to the car, because it doesn't require any kind of materials, although I'm going to show you some arm movements that go with it. So this is called mystery word. And what you're going to do for this activity is say each sound in a word, individual sound in a word, and have your child guess what the word is. So I have a little fall themed one for you all, a fall/Halloween themed one for you all. So if you can guess the word, you can put it into the chat for everyone as I make the sounds. And you can, modify your hands however you want for this. If you want to use hand movements, you can use fingers and tap out the sounds. I'm going to do what I call robot arms, which is just putting, if you think about the dance, the robot, you put your arms up, and I'm going to make one arm movement for each sound. So see if you can guess this word. B, a, t. Yeah. And bonus if you can say how many sounds were in the word. Yeah, we got that. Yep. Great. Thank you. All right, here's the next one. And same thing. What's the word if you want to guess how many sounds are in it? But you can also count how many times I'm moving my arm. Apple. Good. Apple and 3. Now notice there's 3 sounds in apple. A-ul, even though there's 5 letters. So you can see the difference between letters and sounds there. All right, here's a trickier one. Leaves. Leaves, yeah. And if you're catching on to my fall/October theme, I had bat, apple, and leaves. So depending on your child's interest, you can pick some words that are related to things that your child's interested in. You can pick a theme like how I did, or you can just do random words. Or you can flip it around and have your child come up with mystery words to segment those words into sounds, and you can guess the mystery word and just, make it your own and have fun with it. Okay, so similarly, we have a word chaining activity. If you think of a chain in this game. You're going to start off with one word, and you're going to tell your child to either to manipulate the sounds somehow. So like take off the first sound and add a second sound. So we're going to start with pan. Take off the p and add a, oh, you might have to cue it up for me, Carly. Take off the p and add a f. And you can see pan changes to fan. So that's manipulating the first sound. Now you have fan, and take off the n and change it to a t. And you get fat, fat. Take off the ah and change it to an I. This one's going to be more challenging because it's a medial sound. It, fit. Take off the and change it to a sp, it, spit. Yep, good job. And take off the t and change it to a n, sp, in, spin. Now take off the in and change it to an I. Or I should say, take off the in, change it to an I. Sp, ein. And last, take off the sp and change it to a sh, ein. And again, this one, I found as a teacher, I had to have, like how I have it queued up for me, I had to have this written out before doing it with children. That's just me. Of course, you can do it on the fly. But personally, I always had to have this written up as a visual cue for me. Otherwise, I could get confused. But again, this is something you would do with a child without them having to look at the words.
Yeah, and Erin, you made a good point too by saying like from fat to fit might be a little bit more challenging because of that middle sound versus the beginning and end. You might recall we mentioned earlier that one of the first things that children will be able to do is manipulate beginning and ending sounds because it's the easiest to hear. It's either the first thing that's coming out of your mouth or the last, but that middle sound can often be more tricky. So
yeah, it was even tricky for me on spin to spine. And I think even here, having the visual cues messed me up in in that context. So it just shows you our eyes can play tricks on us sometimes. But again, this is something that you can work on depending on what your child's working on. So if your child's mastered manipulating beginning sounds, maybe just do chaining, focusing on end sounds. Or if they're pretty good with the beginning and end and they need a little bit more challenge, go ahead and try manipulating the middle sound.
And then another activity that I'm going to go ahead and walk you all through. So this is a resource that we have developed at RIF, and it's on our website for you all to download and use. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen in a second because it's a different PowerPoint that I'm going to show you. But basically, it's giving students an opportunity to now put together sounds, which are called phonemes, which you've learned, and letters, or what they see and what they write, which are called graphemes. So phonics is the idea of putting together those sounds and those letters. So an activity that we created for you all can be found here. So I'm going to see if it'll actually just open the way it is. And let me see if I can share my screen this way. Ooh, page not found. That's okay, because I know exactly where it is. And if you're going on our website, it is linked there, and you'll get all these links and a copy of the presentation as well. But it's called the Sound Spelling Resource. And if you go ahead and download it, it will open a PowerPoint for you called Sound Spelling. And the reason why I'm opening is so I can show you how it works. Okay, so you will open it, and it tells you a little bit about what we're going over tonight. So the difference between a phoneme and a grapheme. And then it'll give you the instructions here. So on each of these slides, you will hear a recording of 45 phonemes and their corresponding graphemes, which is the physical thing that you see on the page, the way that it's written. So just wanted to just throw a disclaimer out there that these are going to be 45 of the most common phonemes. There are definitely more. So this is not to say that these are all of them, but these are the most common that students will learn early on. So if you start the PowerPoint, and let's say you're on this slide, you will hear the sound ah, and it's showing you a picture that resembles that sound. So it will do all of that with all of the consonants in the alphabet. And you'll notice that some of the letters have multiple spellings on the slides. So this is a great example right here. So the sound that you're going to hear is k, like cat. The sound k can be represented in three different ways. So it can be represented by a C, a K, or a letter, a vowel before that sound. So each of these will give you the sound, you'll hear the actual sound, and it gives you the representation of the spelling patterns as well as an image. So this is yours to download and use with your kiddos whenever you would like to. So I'm going to go ahead and switch back to our original presentation, resume slideshow, and on to the next one. This is our favorite resource. I'm going to throw it back to Erin.
Yes, so very similar to what you just saw. This is basically a condensed version of that PowerPoint. This is great for if you're an educator, you might want to print this out and have it for your students as they're learning how to spell, or if you're a family at home and your child's working on writing, having a resource like this gives them a picture that they connect to the sound, and then it gives all of the, as Carly was mentioning, the most common spellings for that sound. So for example, under the guitar, the sound is g, and the most common spellings is G, GH, or a vowel followed by two G's. And this has all of the most common sounds, so including the long vowels, the digraphs, which are those two letters together that make one sound, like TH actually has two sounds. So we have a thumb here for th, and a feather for th. So all the sounds are represented here, and their most common spelling patterns underneath. Okay, so for families or also educators, we wanted to go over a few tips for decoding words. So basically, if you're sitting with your child and they're reading a book that they brought home from school, or they're reading a book that you have at home, and they get to a word and they don't know how to decode that word, it's a tricky word for them. So first, you want to start with maybe they're getting a little overwhelmed by how long the word is. Obviously here we put cat, that's a shorter word, but it might be overwhelming to them to see the whole word, but maybe they can recognize the first sound. So just point to the first sound. You can even use your finger or a bookmark to cover up the rest and just say, what's the first sound that you see there? And for this one, it's k. Keeping in mind, if it's a word, again, with like one of those digraphs such as SH, you want to make sure that you're not covering up the H and saying, what's the first sound? Because S is going to be very different sound than SH. So we are talking about the beginning sound, not necessarily just the single letter. So start with the beginning sound, and then see if they can decode after that. Another thing you can do similarly, either using your finger to cover the rest of the word, or you can use like a bookmark, is to chunk the word into syllables. So here's a three-syllable word, forgetful. Your child might come to this and feel a little overwhelmed, like, wow, that's a long word. But if you look at it, there's actually three smaller words in that word that they might know. Like for is a very common word, so is get, and full they might be able to decode. So if you just cover up the rest and kind of help your child chunk it by syllables, it will help them see that they can decode even these longer words. Now, here's the real tricky one. What to do if you get to an irregular word. These are words that don't follow the traditional phonics patterns, and I'll show you. I've always liked to call these oddballs, or words that don't play by the rules, because I think that makes it fun for kids. And you also might hear your child's teacher, or you as a teacher might refer to these as sight words. That's pretty common. The reason why we call them sight words is because it's often thought that these are words you can only memorize or only read by sight, or basically you may have been told that you need to just memorize these words. That's the only way to learn these words. You just need to memorize them. Eventually you do have a lot of sight words in your word bank. Even words like cat for you and I is probably a sight word. We don't need to sound out each sound in it. But to get there, even for these words that are irregular, it's still helpful for children to try to decode it, which might be different than what you've been taught before. So WH makes the sound. It's different than a W, because when it has an H, you can actually feel the breath coming out. So you can have them start with that sound, and they might get to this A and say ah. That's okay for now. We're going to correct them. Let them sound it out. Act, wat. Okay, first of all, you can stop them there. Is wat a word that they know? If it's not, then, we can go through and ask them. We can correct them and say, this word is what? All right, so you let them sound it out. They pronounced the word incorrectly. And now you're going to say, this word is what? So you're telling them what the word is. It's okay if you tell a child a word every once in a while. We all have to do it. Then the important thing is to go through the word and identify what part of the word is an oddball or doesn't play by the rules. I love that, doesn't play by the rules. I think it's fun for kids. So let's do it together. So WH in the word what sound does it make? You can do this at home if you want. So does WH play by the rules? Sure does. All right, now what? What sound does the A make in the word what? If you said you're correct. Now, does A usually make the sound No, it usually makes the sound ah. So that letter in this word doesn't play by the rules. And then how about the letter T in the word what? Yep, it makes the T sound. So T plays by the rules. Now, what you can do, depending on, I'm not going to encourage you to write in a book, but if it is a book that you've maybe printed out at home, you can either like bold the A or highlight the A, or I've seen kids put little hearts around the A, saying that's a letter I need to learn by heart. And that actually makes this connection between this word in their brain, that sight word connection, stronger for them. So just calling it out, it doesn't play by the rules, and we acknowledge that. And now that connection between this word and the sound that it makes is stronger in my brain. And then the last thing I want to say here is a child's independent reading level, meaning a book that they can pick up and read on their own without support from an adult, means they can read it with 95% or greater accuracy. So what that means for you as a family member, if your child misses a word here and there, as long as they're reading with 95% or greater accuracy, that's okay. It's okay to read and have mistakes in words, some of the time, and that's still considered your independent reading book.
Awesome. Thanks, Erin. So now some fun, joyful activities to reinforce this skill. So one is simply called word attack. So choose any type of object that your child loves. Maybe it's a toy car, maybe it's a soccer ball like you see on the screen, or maybe it's a stuffy. And whatever object is going to motivate them, let them choose it for this activity. So then we're going to think of the word pig. So let's just think of the word pig. We're going to break it apart and attack the word to decode each sound with our object. So unfortunately, I don't have a fun object nearby. I have a little chapstick, but we're going to use this chapstick because I love chapstick. So we're going to use any type of object to do this activity. I would simply tell my child, okay, use your object to decode the word or break apart the word pig. Because remember, this is just an activity where you're not going to look at a word, you're just listening. So the word pig. So I'm going to take my object and I'm going to drag it along the word. So I'm going to say pig, pig. Could do this with the word sheep. Sheep. It's a lot more fun with a car because it's driving along. The key here, the biggest tip that we want to share with you is as much as you possibly can, we want to reinforce what is called a continual blend. So what I modeled before by saying pig, that's not continual. Pig, that's continual. It's dragging each sound and it's really blending them together so that it sounds more like a word that we would speak rather than egg or e. So sheep or pig really allows them to not only play with an object that they love, but make those connections and physically drag their object across a word. And we can do it with shaving cream or flour as well. And I'll let Erin share a little bit about that because I know that Ruth probably loves this.
Yes, and I love these kind of sensory activities because, especially for children who are very like tactile learners who love to learn with their hands, this is a great way to engage them. So you can use any items that you have at home. I've used shaving cream. I recommend putting it like on a baking pan or something just to kind of help keep it contained. You can use sand if that's available to you, or flour, any kind of material that you can draw, write in. You can use. And this is more of like a spelling activity. So rather than decoding the word, we're actually encoding the word, meaning we're taking our knowledge of letters and sounds and spelling the word. So in this case, your child might have words that they're working on or phonics patterns that they're working on. Maybe they've brought home a word list that goes along with phonics patterns that they're working on. You can just read them the word. I see this boy to the left here. I'm not sure if it's a boy. This child to the left here is working on the word the. So you would just say to the child, the word is the, and have them spell it out the best that they can. Again, you want to reinforce, similar to the what decoding activity, you want to reinforce positives before addressing mistakes. So let's say, so this child in the left picture did spell the correctly, T-H-E, but let's say they spelled it T-H-U, because that would make sense, right? It's important to first identify like, oh, I see that you wrote TH for the th sound. Yeah, that's great. Now we're going to spell it. I see you wrote a U for the sound. U usually makes the sound but in this word, E makes the sound And then what can you say? Does E play by the rules in this word? No, it's an oddball. And you can reinforce it that way.
And Erin, when Erin said something, it reminded me of something else about this activity. You can also do this activity when you are practicing phonics skills. It doesn't have to just be a listening activity. You can actually have a child with an object when they are physically reading words off the paper. It doesn't have to just be a phonemic awareness activity. It's definitely also could be included as a phonics activity. I used to have my students do this all the time. They also sell or they make guided reading strips, they're called. And they're literally like, they're probably like the length of a bookmark, and it has a color strip right in the middle of it. And it really helps the students like focus on that portion of the text that they're reading as well. And that's a good physical connection for later on reading as well.
Okay, so that we talked about phonemic awareness and phonics, so putting sounds and letters together. Now we're going to talk about a topic that often gets overlooked. And I love this graphic here because I think it brings it together perfectly. And that topic is fluency. It's something you might not hear about a lot in reading, but it's very important because it connects children's ability to lift the words off the page or decode those words with their ability to comprehend the text. So what is fluency? My favorite definition for fluency is your ability to read with appropriate rate, meaning not too fast or not too slow. Accuracy, that just means are you reading the words correctly? Remember, 95% or greater is independent. And expression, meaning that the expression you're using in your voice is matching what's happening in the text, the author's intentions around the text. When students learn to read in expressive and meaningful tones, they're learning to construct meaning. And as you can see with our bridge, therefore they're demonstrating their comprehension. And again, this fluency is the bridge between more foundational skills like word decoding and higher level thinking skills like comprehension.
So you might be asking, how can I tell if my child needs help with fluency or is disfluent? So one example could be if your child is reading in a slow and choppy or monotone voice. So that's kind of what Erin was referring to here about expression, or rate, honestly, slow. That it also has to do with the rate. And you could be sounding like a robot or reading too quickly, that next bullet, and without that expression, reading like a really, really fast rabbit. Love these graphics. Or if your child is skipping over punctuation and not changing the tone to reflect that punctuation. So similarly to what Aaron was saying before, is it matching what the story is about? Is it matching the tone of the story? And speaking about this bridge here, because fluent readers don't have to focus on breaking down the words, they can then focus more on comprehension and what they're reading. So if you are a fluent reader, you're able to recognize words and comprehend at the same time. And similarly, in the beginning of the webinar, we talked about how at RIF, we are all about joy and motivation, and all of these activities are aligned to that. And fluency can also affect a child's motivation to read. So if a child's not reading fluently, they might not enjoy it because they might feel uncomfortable. And then later on, that can contribute to their feelings about reading later on. So it's really important to catch those things early on to make sure that their comprehension is not affected when they're reading a lot more complex text when they get older. So one example of a joyful fluency activity is called choral reading. So choral reading, that word choral, if you were a music nerd like me, maybe you took chorus and that's where you were singing. But choral reading is when a group of students read aloud together to enhance their fluency, self-confidence, and overall motivation to read. So this practice of choral reading can provide an opportunity for students to practice their own fluency, listen to what it sounds like to be a fluent reader, and then receive support from a teacher because that an educator is going to be around when you are participating in this activity. So on the next slide, there's going to be one of my favorite poems. And Aaron, I'm going to pick on you and I are going to read this poem together and we are going to choral read it. If you want to join us at home, you please do keep yourself on mute because I think a lot of people off mute would get a little bit crazy, but we're going to model what it might sound like when you're practicing choral reading and feel free to join us. So I will read the title and the author, and then Aaron and I will start to read the poem together. So I opened a book by Julia Donaldson. I opened a book, and in I strode. Now nobody can find me. I've left my chair, my house, my road, my town, and my world behind me. I'm wearing the cloak, I've slipped on the ring, I've swallowed the magic potion. I've fought with a dragon, dined with a king, and dived in a bottomless ocean. I opened a book and made some friends. I shared their tears and laughter and followed their road with its bumps and bends to the happily ever after. I finished my book and out I came. The cloak can no longer hide me. My chair and my house are just the same, but I have a book inside me. I love that poem. But this is a really, really, I mean, this is a more complex poem, of course, when it comes to the words that are mentioned in it in regards to decoding it. But you can choose any story to practice with your child. And it's just a fun way to really be able to listen to what it sounds like to be a fluent reader and practice it yourself.
And I'll share a couple examples of that too, if that's all right, Carly.
Please, yeah.
I did a lot of choral reading with my students, especially in upper elementary, those students who are still struggling with fluency. And as you notice, when I was reading with Carly, I was the less confident reader. So my voice was slightly quieter and even maybe a little slower than Carly's. That's okay if you're the stronger reader in the case and you are going to have a stronger voice than your child, and maybe you take turns with it. When I used to do this with groups of students, I would ask at the beginning who wants to be lead singer and who's going to be backup. So, you know, a student would volunteer, I'm going to be lead singer for this, and I'm going to have the stronger voice, and backup, we're still going to be a chorus, but we might have a little bit quieter voice than the lead singer in that. And then similarly, I've had families share with me that, you know, they had one child who was struggling with fluency and they started this practice, but it became a whole family thing. And it was something that they enjoyed doing together. So definitely make it a part of your family reading. Okay, so I'm going to share another activity that you can do. This is specifically for if your child is maybe ignoring or reading too quickly over punctuation. So the first thing is just by teaching or talking to your child about what punctuation is, what each of the marks mean, and what we're going to do with our voice when we're reading with punctuation. So a period is a full stop. You can take a full breath when you stop at a period, whereas a comma is a brief pause. You're going to take like a half a breath at a comma. A question mark, your voice will lift up at the end because you're having a question voice. And an exclamation point, of course, is like an excited, or maybe depending on the context of the text, it could be a scared voice. But again, this is the bridge to comprehension. So whether you're using a happy, excited voice or a scared, excited voice or a shouting voice will also depend on the meaning that you're making as you're reading the text. But to take away that and just focus on the punctuation, I love this activity because it doesn't use words, it uses numbers. So you're just reading numbers here, but focusing on the punctuation. So I will do the first one so you get the point, and then I would love it if you joined in at home. So again, commas, half a breath, period is full breath. So this first sentence would be like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so help me with the second one. It would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So notice I kind of did a short pause between it. All right, a little bit trickier. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Using a question voice, that voice lifts up at the end. All right, and the last one's really fun. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you get the point. The purpose is to really hone in on that punctuation because you're not too worried about the words. You're using numbers instead, and it's really fun for kids.
All right, so we are nearing our time together towards the end, but just wanted to give you all a couple of resources before we end with our read aloud. So if you have any kiddos around you and you want to start gathering them, now would be the time. But some family resources that we have here at RIF, we have a whole page of quick guides for families in all different languages, for all different ages. I just gave you a preview here of our family tip sheet, available in all of these different languages here. And then we also have a whole section on our website dedicated to read aloud support. And that's where you will find the phoneme grapheme activity that I modeled for you earlier, as well as a bunch of other read aloud resources. And like I mentioned before, you'll get a copy of all of what we shared about today, including the recording. So all of the links to everything will be sent out to you within the next day or so. All right. And we are turning it to the most exciting part of our webinar for tonight. So huge thanks to our good friends at Lee and Low Books for the permissions to read aloud this wonderful story. And in a moment, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and turn off my fake background because I'm going to actually read the physical hard copy book. I just think it's so much more joyful than a digital version, but digital versions are, of course, joyful as well. But I'm excited to have a hard copy. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And yes, like Erin said, if you have any kiddos around, please have them come in. All right, so let me turn off my background here. Now you'll see my ugly bedroom background, my office bedroom. All right. So this story is called Sumo Joe, written by Mia Wengen and illustrated by Nat Iwata. Sumo Joe. Get up early. Have to hurry, Sumo Joe. Strong big bro, built for sumo. Gentle though. Build the ring, here we go. Practice sumo. Special belt, wrapped like so, takes a duo. Mawashi long, knotted strong, time for sumo. Hands on knees, leg raised slow, practice shiko. Stomping strong, demons be gone. It's from Shinto. Slide hands and feet, avoid defeat. Drill called Teppo. Sacred salt fling to bless the ring at the doiho. Lift thigh high, twist belt low, uchimuso. Who is here with no fear? Aikido Joe. She wants to join boy only place. She's not allowed in sacred space. It's kind of rude. She wants to prove that she's got moves. Aikido versus sumo. And step in, step back. Time to attack, Sumo Joe. Circle the ring, stay down low, Aikido Joe. Step out of ring with heel or toe, lose Sumo. Don't move a thing, sidestep, fling. Bye-bye, Joe. Aikido Joe beats Sumo Joe. Yeah. And the end. I love that story because fittingly, it has so many different types of punctuation, has lots of questions, exclamations, commas, periods. Hopefully you caught on to me modeling some of the beautiful work that Erin showed us earlier. I'm going to go ahead and turn back on my library background because it's nice and pretty. And I'm going to reshare, and that is our whole session. And we are now switching over to the Q&A portion for tonight. So if you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A box and or the chat. And we'll stay on for a couple minutes to make sure that we answer all of your questions.
And Carly, before we close out, will you just share your screen and show everyone where they can access the recorded webinars on our website?
Absolutely. Yep. I will also drop the link in the chat for you all right now.
This should be posted in about 48 hours from today.
Yes. So there is the link there, and I'll reshare my screen so you can see what the page looks like. So you probably have seen this page if you registered with us, but maybe you registered through a social media marketing ad, so maybe not. But here is our webinar page, and it has the schedule for the remainder of the calendar year here, as well as registration links. And then here are where the recordings will live. So the latest webinar will always be at the top. So we just had one about a week or so ago. So if you're interested, go ahead and check that one out. And then we have the rest of our webinars broken apart by our series. So we have our educator count series, which is our educator focused webinars. And then we have our every book counts, which talks about different disciplines and how to use literature to teach those disciplines. And then on our every family count series, which is a part of the series that you all are joined for tonight. So this is our family focused webinar series. And here's where all the recordings are. And for those of you who are asking about our Spanish recording, it is Literacy Begins Early, and it's right here. It's completely done in Spanish, and it's a Spanish version of our English webinar, Literacy Begins Early, which is right next to it. So we have it available in both English and Spanish, and that talks about skills for birth through age 5. And we are always looking to host more as resources come available for us. So we're looking forward to hopefully doing this one and the next one in Spanish as well for families. Yep. So I just shared that link in the chat for you all.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We'll hang out for a couple more minutes in case you have questions, but thank you for joining us. We hope you'll come to more of our webinars and be well.
And I'm going to hang on for about another minute or so and share some links in the chat if you would like to grab them before you leave. It's a little hard to do both. So there's the read aloud support, which has the activity, the sound activity that we mentioned. And then I'm going to also give you all the family guides link. And whether you are a family member or an educator, we really thank you so much for coming out this evening, and we hope to see you at the next one.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Michelle.
And thank you. Yes, those are very, very nice words. We are all about making it joyful, so happy to always do that. And I don't think I see any questions.
Great.
So again, thanks all, and please check out the recording and feel free to share any of the resources with other folks in your network. We'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.